G'day there, I'm You may be familiar with my body of work. I made some video game reviews between 2012 and 2015. Time to review those. In August of 2012, I just finished making one video for each of these 14 Net Yaroze games on a demo disc. Then I made this review of some Net Yaroze games as a recap of what I thought of those 14 games. My opinions have changed quite a bit since then. I was needlessly harsh on games like The Incredible Cone Man, and very vague in my endless praise of Total Soccer Yaroze and Between the Eyes. Of course, I was only 15 then. I've changed a lot since. I'd love to do a new series on all these games in higher quality, in all senses of the word, and a new re-review. So, 5 months had passed since Net Yaroze, and I'd been making gameplay videos and gotten bored of that. I uploaded a channel update saying I was switching to only doing reviews, starting with Gran Turismo 2, which I now count as my second review because Net Yaroze was one. Gran Turismo 2 was the first game I ever owned. It was formative to me in my love of video gaming and cars, because I was playing it since before I turned 4 and could hardly make my way around Tahiti Road. So I pick probably the most important game to me for my first review, and very much failed to explain what was great about it, only said, "This game is great." Not very helpful. My third review, and first of 10 in that whirlwind February, was Star Wars Battlefront for the PlayStation 2. And it's up here forever as a really good example of really bad combing. A technical problem that comes from picking the worst deinterlacing option. So besides the video being very hard to watch, the review was competent mostly, but a lot of it's dragged down by me being a 15-year-old pretentious nerd, lashing out against popular online multiplayer games and the people I don't like who play them, and that's not necessary. Arguing over whose hobby is superior is a puerile and ridiculous activity. But the sequel trilogy... Review number 4 was for early PS2 racing game, Driving Emotion Type S, and I'm holding the paper cover outside the sleeve to make it look very clean, because the case is so very covered in sticker gunk. I thought that was a very clever and innovative solution. There's pretty much nothing else good here, though. Besides, of course, the crash at 5 minutes 30. Anyway, this review, I feel, falls flat for many reasons. I didn't settle on any particular tone. Was it going to be informative or funny? If informative, I didn't have enough experience with the game. If funny, I needed better lines and I needed them closer together. The pacing's wrong, it needs to be much snappier. Review number 5 is one of the worst things I ever made. It's for Rugby League 2 for the Xbox. Chosen at random, I'd never really played the game at all. I'd only recently acquired... Wow, Parkley Markets. I'd only recently acquired the game and had probably only played 2 matches recently, and one many years ago. I only watch about 2 matches of NRL per year anyway, so I'm in no way qualified to review the game. I have no idea what I'm doing, and I waffled on for 10 minutes about nothing. But at least I stopped using review scores with this one, so one good thing. The next day I uploaded my review for Tekken 2. Big improvement over the Rugby League 2 review, of course, since this was a game I'd played a lot of, but still a lot of time wasting was done here. 90 seconds of talking before I started, 90 seconds of the game's intro. Everyone's already gone home, Snake of Bacon. Once I do get started, it's a review that I'm not especially ashamed of. I'd probably rank it somewhere around the low middle of the first 33 reviews. But it's patently obvious that I rushed it out in a day from its length and how I'm talking quietly in parts because it was too late at night and I didn't want to wake people up. I would have said more, but that's not how this equal time limit thing works. Review number 7 was for Just Cause for the PlayStation 2. I'd spent over 100 hours completely completing Just Cause because I liked it so much, and you'd think that would give me a pretty good foundation to make a solid review, but I didn't spend nearly enough time making the review. I let the game's cutscenes try and speak for me. I even threw in the Attract Screen movie because it was a cool montage of gameplay that I didn't have to go and capture, and it just wasn't satisfying. The end result is a review that I know could be better. I know in my head there's a better review of Just Cause. Review number 8 was for Halo Combat Evolved. I can hardly tell you in 36 seconds how terrible an idea it was, but I'll try. I'm wasting time already. At the time I made the review, Halo was already 12 years old. Millions had played it and thousands had reviewed it. There was consensus on the game. Everyone knows what it is and what it does well. And in this review I particularly failed to bring anything new to the conversation. Instead, all I did was introduce it, say it was a bit overrated being at the top of the Guinness World Record Games Edition poll for the best games ever made without giving a reason why, and I couldn't give a reason why because I hadn't even finished half the campaign. I didn't mention the multiplayer and the reviews in the wrong aspect ratio. Bad. Review number 9 was for 2007's Formula 1 Championship Edition for the PlayStation 3. And the review, while it's no journalistic masterpiece, is a step up from the previous one. Like too many of my earlier reviews, this was a game that I'd not played very much of. I had played the demo quite a few times over the years before I could find a copy of the game for myself, so I already knew what I liked about the game and how it compared to its contemporaries. I hope the demo is still downloadable. And now I think about it, if the viewer is only looking for a recommendation on whether to buy the game or not, I think I've answered that with my review. Gesundheit! Review number 10 was for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 for the PlayStation. Oh, look at its paltry view count in comparison to the previous one. Feel no pity for it. It does not deserve your views. There's nothing to see here. It's an 11-minute long review with precious little reviewing done in it. There's a 2-minute gameplay montage in the middle of just me doing some very average gaps. And when that's not even the biggest time waster, because most of the review is stupid things like, you can play in the wrong aspect ratio to have more room in split screen, which doesn't make any sense. At least I found a good use for Pinnacle Studios' wonderful transitions, though. Following on from that little mess was this much larger mess called GameCube Week, my spontaneous decision to review 5 GameCube games I'd hardly played. Dark Summit was not one of them, even if you spotted it for a second. It was replaced with Rogue Leader. So why 5 GameCube games in a week? Because I had 5 roasted crickets to eat that I got for my birthday. Probably. I don't know what the real reason was. It was probably that. But just quickly, Wave Race Blue Storm, since we've used up most of our seconds. The review I shouldn't have made because I hadn't played enough of the game. All I said was all I knew. The game was pretty fun, very hard, turbo button tries to kill you every time. Review number 12, and the second of GameCube Week, was for SpongeBob SquarePants Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, aka SPSPROTFT, or SPSPROTFT, whatever you want to call it. It was a really bad review because I'd only played 10 to 15% of the game, about as much as I'd played of Wave Race Blue Storm, but especially bad because this is a narrative adventure game. And then tried to do all of my editing in just a few hours, and parts of it make absolutely no sense. The sentences missing and other parts repeated. It doesn't work at all. Review 13 and the third part of GameCube Week, Mario Kart Double Dash. At least I'd played enough of this one to have an idea of what I was talking about. But that didn't seem to help me much, because once again, I demonstrated that I cannot make a good review in a day. Not every day, or I certainly should not try and make a review in a day. Because what happens is, I stop talking about the game's strengths and weaknesses and start talking about how many things you'd need to set up a big enough LAN party for Mario Kart Double Dash to work, because you need so many GameCubes and so on, or how a future game should have all the tracks. It's irrelevant. For Star Wars Rogue Leader, Rogue Squadron 2, I made the baffling decision to do my Gollum and Smeagol act for the opening crawl. Why?
Yes, why, SnakeOfBacon's? Don't ask Master rude questions. Get it, Gollum. Yes, SnakeOfBacon's is a moron using Gollum and Smeagol voices at the wrong time.
And they only sound right if the dialogue's right. So, anyway, that was a waste of time. Shouldn't have reviewed this game. Hadn't played enough of it, just like the last one. You're seeing a pattern here. I need to play games before I review them. And we finish off GameCube Week with the same quality it always maintained. None. With Super Mario Sunshine. Another game I'd played not nearly enough of to try and attempt to think I could review it. And much worse than usual, it depends on hearsay, talking about how other reviews weren't kind to it in the time of its release. What other reviews? Do I remember reading those reviews back then? No. Had I even read any of the reviews, or just the Wikipedia article that mentioned that? I mean, come on, Snake of Bacon, this is terrible practice. Never do a review like this again. This is bottom tier stuff. Review 16, Dragon Ball Z Budokai. Ha, I said it. Dragon Ball Z, I'm sorry. It's Z in Japan. I'm glad GameCube Week's over. So here was a game that I'd played quite a lot of, and wow, I used to be good with Hercule. On the subject of the review, though, I would of course do it very differently now. There was too many very long pauses, and other parts I'd write differently to be more humorous or informative or whatever, but for the time, not too shabby. I especially like playing tennis with a key ball. That's That's good. Review number 17 was for Assault Suits Valken for the PlayStation 2, a port of a 1992 Super Nintendo game, re-released in 2004 and 2005 for PAL. Anyway, this is my most disliked review, and it's easy for me to see why. I was needlessly harsh on the game, and didn't make it clear enough that I have no problem with Cybernator. Granted, I haven't played very much of it. I played a bit of this PS2 game and decided I just could not like it. Then I played the original in an emulator and saw how much more I liked the original. And if this were a decent review, I would have compared the two. Review number 18 was for Midtown Madness 3 for the original Xbox, exclusively. I'd love to play it again, but my original Xbox is dead. On the subject of the review, it was very short, 5 minutes in comparison to my average of 8.5 or so. And the review was like a list. Yes, it has these cities, it has a variety of vehicles, it has checkpoint races and great multiplayer options. But did I mention the wonderful animations, the attention to detail put into those cities, the emergent gameplay to be found within? Those are the things I should mention in a review. Review number 19 was for Suzuki Alstare Extreme Racing, maybe Alstare. Anyway, for the SEGA Dreamcast! My SEGA Dreamcast died in the process of making this video, and I resurrected it with toothpicks into its power supply, and the problem has been fine for the last 8 years. I haven't checked it today, it could be dead. That shouldn't have taken up half the review, and certainly not half the re-review, but it did, and that's the past. As usual, it suffers from my early review's lack of perfectionism, but I have got a fairly competent description of what the game is all about. I also threw unnecessary dirt at Ducati World Racing Challenge, which I shouldn't have done, I haven't played that game. My 20th review, known in Japan as Ryuga Gotoku 3, released in the West as Yakuza 3, and released in Australia as Yakuza 3, apparently, for the PlayStation 3 in 2010. You can file this one under reviews for games that I really love, but mostly fail to explain what I love about them because I improvise these reviews and don't spend enough time going back over what I've said and saying it again in a way that makes sense, and making sure that the whole thing has a structure that would make sense to an average person, such as not putting the story outline at the very end of the thing. Which is an odd name for a file, but it's in that cabinet somewhere. Review number 21 was for Chopper Attack for the Nintendo 64, and this one goes in the opposite category of games that I've hardly played at all and should not have reviewed, because in this case, the category name ended a while ago. In this case, I've played only the first level. And in fact, I've never beaten the first level. I've just attempted it with a few of the different helicopters in the game. And you know, in spite of how little I played, this is probably the best of those reviews for games that I'd hardly played. So it's got that going for it. I'll have to try and beat this level sometime this year. Review 22. Do not leave Pfizer Hex on your face overnight. Project Gotham Racing 2. One of the few reviews I've made that I don't think needs fixing immediately. I think it's mostly alright. And what is it that makes it mostly alright? Well, that would be the general tone I've achieved. Although it is a bit slow in parts, I think it's entertaining enough and informative enough about the game. And I even included some Luma keying. Yeah, that's some real editing work. It's pretty simple, but it's interesting. Review number 23 was Mortal Kombat Armageddon for the PS2. 40% of the video is taken up by the intro of the game. It's a bit much. Considering how long it is, I probably should have titled the video Mortal Kombat Armageddon Intro and Review. As for the review part, it needed some work. A lot of work. Because, of course, I don't write these reviews. I improvise them into a microphone, like I'm doing now, and then retake over and over again until it's perfect. But obviously I stopped a lot earlier then. I did a few runs and quit at the end of the day, and I shouldn't do that anymore. Review 24, 2001's Gran Turismo 3 for the PlayStation 2. Much like how Gran Turismo 2 is my second review and totally needs to be replaced by a much more thorough and large review, so too does my review of Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec utterly fall short in chronicling what a marvellous game it is. The footage especially is terrible, and I make very bold claims about the AI being unbeatable because I was very, very rusty at the game, which I admitted, but somehow didn't connect the dots. Review 25 represents a paradigm shift. Well, I slowed down my schedule to one review a month And, well, the first 3.5 minutes of this review is a review of what gameplay is offered in Cinderella. The other 6.5 minutes is the entirety of the cartoon. Most reviewers would have paused it to laugh at it and respond to it. I had no response ready. I took the easy way out by just saying nothing and dying with a Wilhelm scream at the end. I started review 26 for Top Spin by thanking my 113 subscribers, and I'd like to make it more current. I'd like to thank all of my 113 times 9.301 subscribers once more. Thank you. I also started by saying sorry for not uploading in a month, and the apology was probably unnecessary because really I should have slowed down, and I stuck with it for a while. I did one review a month until I burnt out much worse. This review though, I'm not really ashamed of it, which means it's good. If you're wondering why I laughed at and blew a raspberry at the Xbox One, it was July 2013 at the time. Review 27, the classic Alien Trilogy. The review could have been a classic too if it weren't hampered by a few little things. Now, yes, it has a great thumbnail, that's a good pro, but here's some cons. I hadn't played enough of the game, really only a few levels. Shameful. The other major con is the phrase, "not that great." A quite insidious phrase. What was the intention behind it? It's as if I'm saying, well, this thing is good, but it's not one of my favourite good things. And the numbering system never really died. I'm just trying to say 7 out of 10 because I'm an idiot. Okay, I'm over it. Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Now I've got something else to be upset about. Battered Savs. No, I'm upset about the review, not the battered Savs. So, a battered sav is a Savoy sausage or other processed piece of meat covered in batter. And Super Smash Bros. Brawl review for the Wii was my 28th review and features terrible footage with way too many players' first names in it. And the audio content is basically a rough draft of things I should have deleted. Too late they cry, it's canon. Yeah, well it's filler. You don't need to watch it. Review 29, Far Cry 2 for the PlayStation 3. Featuring Africa by Toto, without permission of course. Even without that, this is my measuring stick. And has been for over 7 years. Any review I made, I decided, look, it has to be at least as good as the Far Cry 2 review for me to be satisfied with it. Because uniquely among my reviews, the Far Cry 2 review sounds like an essay. Because I had such a clear idea of what, in my head, I wanted to say about the game. There are still parts of it I would change, but I'm happy with it. 5 months passed before my next review, and I had regressed a bit back to doing a bad Phoenix game, and probably doing it not even as well as Cinderella. There's only a few minutes of review here. There's over a minute of this loading screen with some music that I made in Fruity Loops to show how long the loading screen was. And then there really is hardly any review left because most of the video is actually taken up by the story of how I bought 3 copies for 6 cents at Big W and how you can win one of them. Well, you can't now because someone has actually won that one. The contest's over. So, 5 more months passed and a thoroughly unhappy SnakeOfBacon returned to try and review another one of his favourite games. And since I wasn't happy with the footage I got, I guess that dragged everything else down because once again I was unsure of how to introduce the game, what to say, and basically felt I'd failed before I'd even started probably. I don't know, I can't remember back then, but I know I sounded really defeated during this, and it's a review that needed a lot of work. But wait, it got worse. Only those last 2 reviews got made in 2014, so in 2015 I set out to make more and uploaded a trailer. Here's one of those reviews that did end up getting made for Earth Defense Force 2025. My favourite game of 2014. But the review, I was obviously just so tired, burnt out, depressed, you name it. It didn't turn out well at all. It's just hard for me to watch, and I suppose for you as well. It's slow, it doesn't make sense, it needed so much more revising, and I know I could have done it so much better. It just really upsets me to see how poorly I put the whole thing together. I aimed to upload 4 more reviews before the 31st of March, and only finished this second one, and even then, 18 days late. And the finished product is probably the straw that broke the camel's back. I was so disappointed with what I'd made that I just stopped making content. Had no uploads for 14 months, went back into making gameplay videos, found some small success with SX Tricky again, and here we are. I've made a review again. The first review of Season 2, SnakeOfBacon's signing out.